Hey y'all, my name is Adina Barnett Miller, but I'm known to my students as Mrs. B. I've been passionate about West Virginia history for as long as I can remember, but my mom would tell you it all started when I was 3 years old and she bought me a West Virginia counties puzzle at Gino's Pizza. I've taught history in Ripley, West Virginia for over 20 years now, and I'm an adjunct professor who teaches college West Virginia history to high school students. Please join me for West Virginia History with Mrs. B, a field trip across the Mountain State to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. Hey y'all, this is episode 2 of our March to Blair Mountain, and so we're starting here in the Boone County community of Racine, and we are at John Slack Park. And the reason we chose to stop here, even though the miners didn't stop here, is because this is the home of the United Mine Workers of America, their Labor Day picnic every year. And so this field will be filled with coal miners, former coal miners, and their families celebrating Labor Day. And we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about unionization that Labor Day, the reason it exists is to celebrate the victories of the labor movement. Things like pensions and health insurance, the 40-day work week, things that we take for granted like no child labor. Those are all things that were fought for by unions, and so that's why we wanted to stop here. Our next stop will be over in Madison, but I wanted to read a little bit to you from Lon Savage's Thunder in the Mountains about what they experienced on their way from Marmet here to Racine and then over to Madison. It says, "The miners' army began moving again in the early hours of Friday, again without control or direction, but inexorably southward toward Logan and Mingo counties. Their route was the crude dirt road that led along the Big Coal River to Peytona." By the way, that right there is the Big Coal River, and if you look on the other side of the river, that's the railroad that came through here to get the coal out of this valley. And it says they went up Drawdy Creek over the mountain, then down Rock Creek to the Little Coal River, and they would follow the Little Coal into Danville and then Madison. From there, the road turned up Spruce Fork to Sharpless and to Blair, and then wound over Blair Mountain to Ethel and Logan. By then, they knew they would be in battle. General Harry Hill Van Holtz, by the way, one of the major names from World War I, arrived in Charleston at 3 a.m. Friday to assess whether federal troops should intercede to stop the march. A friendly, balding man of 56, he was dapper and mustache, Sam Brown belt, billed cap, riding breeches, and puttees as he arrived with an aide, Colonel Stanley H. Ford. They drove across the bridge over the canal and down into the darkened city to the so-called cardboard capital, a makeshift capital since the real one had burned in January of 1921. There, Major Thompson, who was fast becoming a veteran of the West Virginia campaigns, met him and quickly briefed him. Governor Morgan was called from his bed. He appeared at 4 a.m. and repeated to the general his oft-told story. It was a full-fledged insurrection. Sid Hatfield's death had maddened the state's miners, and they were killing and looting. He had no soldiers, little power. He had to have federal troops. Keeney and Mooney, the leaders of the UMWA, were summoned from their beds, and they appeared as the governor finished. To them, the general was emphatic. If martial law were declared, he said, they and other union officials would be held responsible for the acts committed by law-breaking members of their organization. The miners' march had gone out of all proportion to any probable intent and may soon get entirely out of control, and it had to be stopped, and 2 union officers were the men to stop it. Keeney and Mooney accepted the assessment. The general awed them. As outraged as they were, West Virginia's miners were patriotic Americans, and they did not relish taking on the U.S. Army. At 5:50 a.m., Keeney and Mooney set out by taxi to overtake the Army. Urging the driver to hurry, they moved along the river to Marmet, then up the familiar Lens Creek Road, bouncing in and out of the creek at speeds up to 20 miles an hour. Past the old encampment where the march had started. hour and hour, they jolted along tortuous roads, up the creek and over the ridge, down Short Creek through Racine, where we are now, onto Paytona, then up Drawdy, which is where we'll be going next. All the way they passed armed miners, thousands of them, some camping, some marching, a large body of them having lunch at Paytona, and to all they shouted that the march was over and they should turn back. Keeney commented later he had never seen so many men on the march before. From Racine to Madison, there must have been at least 10,000 men. They reached Madison at noon, having traveled 50 miles in less than 6 hours. We're going to make that trip in a lot quicker time, hopefully. So stick with us. We're going to take you through Paytona and over Drawdy to Madison, and then we'll tell you what happened in Madison once we get there. So we are now on, what road is
West
this?
Virginia Route 3.
We're on West Virginia Route 3, and we're driving through the little community of Paytona on our way to Madison. And while we were in Racine, we picked up a couple of family members. Y'all want to say hello?
Hi.
That's Sarah, and that's Baggy.
Hello.
And so that's Dave's mom and sister. We thought we were going to go on an adventure. We would pick them up and take us with us. So we are on our way.
Drawdy.
Yeah, we're on our way to Madison, but we're driving past Drawdy Falls, which is right down there. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And so it's hard to imagine this drive taking 6 hours, because that's how much it took Mooney and Keeney to get from Charleston to Madison. But we're making this drive, and what'd you say, probably, Dave, it'll take us about 40 minutes or so.
From Racine to Madison?
Well, from Marmet to Madison. 30 minutes. Yeah. So we're now entering the community of Drawdy.
The storm damaged a
So as we are on we're actually following the actual route of the miners. It's very cool to think about as we head towards Madison. Okay, so there are 2 mountains between Marmet and Madison, and this is the second one. This is Drawdy Mountain that we are driving up. So I wanted to show that to y'all, because the miners did have to march over this, and I can't even imagine taking a car over this. This is my first time driving this mountain. That's what I just saw.
Easy.
Dave, listen to your mom.
I'm listening. And I'm also thinking in the back of my head, the infamous point coming up here, right, Sarah?
Almost turtles. Almost turtles back there. That was a big curve. Grandma Bragg switched her turtles.
So we have the Boone County insight, because my sister-in-law, her kids live, you know, they live in Racine, but her kids went to Scott, so they came over this mountain every single day to go to school. So this is a road they know quite well. Gosh, look at this road. This is crazy. Oh my Lord, oh my gosh.
This is almost reminding me of Route 60.
Of Golly Mountain?
Yeah, Golly Mountain over there near Hawks Nest.
Yep, that's exactly what it reminds me of. But I know that road. I don't know this one, so this one.
And that road takes you back out towards Lynn's Creek.
Oh.
Ashford Nellis.
Yes.
Oh, that's the back part of that road that up at the top of the Boone County line. So, but the miners marched over this mountain to go to Madison, and we've been talking about the fact that it took Mooney and Keeney 6 hours to get to from Charleston to Madison, following this same route. I just can't even imagine coming over this like in a Model T. And it was just a dirt road.
And you got to remember their maximum speed was what, 20 miles an hour?
Yeah, maximum 20 miles an hour. I can't even imagine. On a dirt road, coming over this on a dirt road.
You wouldn't want to go any faster
So, all right, we are almost to the other side. So we will pick up with y'all in Madison. So we are out on Quarter G for a little bit of time. We're getting ready. We're what, about a mile we're on this? Not even that.
Not even that. So that's
Just like we're gonna turn.
So we're getting ready. We're literally going from one stoplight to the next stoplight on Quarter G. But we are getting ready to turn off of Quarter G and head into Danville, Madison. So I'm going to film this. This is, you know, where they were trying to get to from Marmette. So, you know, the first community with a place where they could, you know, get supplies, have room to spread out, to think about the fact that they're going to be 10,000 or more miners marching down over this hill into Madison. It's just wild to think about. So we are now crossing under, under the corridor, and down there is the railroad tracks. This is the Danville city limits. Basically, like they run into each other, right? Danville and Madison, they're like back-to-back towns.
I call it Madville.
Madville, that's a good thing to call it. I mean, it is pretty mad. So there's the track right back there behind this row of buildings. And that was used to bring the coal out of this part of the world. This person's gonna pull right out in front of you. And so we're on the main drag. This is still 3, right?
This is West Virginia 85.
All right, we are now on West Virginia 85 because 3 goes to Hamlin.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see in Madison, there's all kinds of places to eat, like Kentucky Fried Chicken and Geno's and Tudor's and Wendy's and Taco Bell. But of course those were not here in 1921 when the miners were marching southward. But there were places to get supplies, to get food. And, you know, so some miners marched, but some rode the trains. And there's even one guy who commandeered a train, basically at gunpoint, and told him to take them south. Hey y'all, we are now basically in between Madison and Danville. And so, as you heard, people call it Madville because Madison and Danville just run right into each other. But we wanted to talk about what is going to take place here in the Madison-Danville hour. And so it says, at Madison, hundreds of miners milled about, sprawling along the streets, camped in nearby hills and hollers, eating from tin plates and cans, loitering in restaurants, pool halls, theaters, and hotel lobbies. Minutes before, the advance guard of the miners' army, marching with near military precision and discipline, had set out for the Logan County line 12 miles away. They had lined up, an observer reported, when their leaders commanded, "Fall in." And at the command, forward march, they swung away on the road to Logan with fire and determination in their eyes, their guns firmly grasped in their hands. Keeney made a quick decision. At 2 p.m., he said they would have a meeting in the Madison ballpark. all Union miners were to attend. He ordered those around him to spread the word and to make arrangements. That then he and Mooney sped out of town towards Logan to overtake the marchers. The advance guard had only gotten a short distance outside of Madison. The taxi passed the column on the road and swung in front of its head. Keeney jumped out and spoke. The column halted. There was a heated exchange. The miners could not stop. Keeney insisted and prevailed. The miners agreed to a temporary halt, turned around, and marched back to Madison. Back in town, Keeney and Mooney grabbed a lunch at the restaurant counter and circulated on the sidewalk outside, urging men to go to the ballpark, hearing stories of their experiences so far. Automobiles shuttled miners from the courthouse lawn to the ballpark as time for the meeting approached. When Keeney and Mooney approached the ballpark, they found the bleachers nearly filled with miners, their guns glistening in the bright sunlight. Other men lay full length on the grass in the shade of the high board fence. Guards manned the gate, and miners gave a new password: "I come creeping." They turned away newspapermen, a policy Keeney endorsed. The men were in an angry mood, said one newsman. Keeney spoke from the hood of the taxi. "A lot of you men are going to disagree with me," he said, "but don't interrupt. I'm telling you facts, and you will find that this is no time to argue." It was suicide to continue the march, he said. He told them that orders to start the march had emanated from President Harding himself. That President Harding had sent General Banholtz to Charleston, and that General Banholtz had called the governor and Keeney Mooney out of bed that very morning and told the two Union officials they and the rest of the Union leadership would be held responsible if the march got out of hand. There was no question Banholtz would see that the march was ended. The entire might of the national government and the United States Army would be used if necessary to stop it. Fighting the Governor Morgan or Sheriff Chafin or the Baldwin Felts thugs and the Mine County cooperatives was fair enough, but the miners, if they continued, would not be fighting these traditional enemies. They would be fighting against the Army of the United States, the same army in which many of the miners had served in France. "Return to your homes," Keeney said. Mooney followed Keeney. Union men, he said, don't balk at federal authority. Union men were loyal to their country. It was their time to give up the march. Trains would be dispatched to Madison and Danville to take them home and back to their jobs. Others spoke, generally agreeing that the miners march should be abandoned at least for now. And an aged black miner rose. "Boys, he's right," he said of Keeney's warning about federal power. "You ain't fooling no more. This is your daddy talking. It's your real Uncle Sam." The decision emerged they would go home, and slowly men began edging out of the ballpark. Many started immediately on the long march. Others waited in Madison for promised train. Word spread into the hills and the hollers and back along the line of the march. Keeney and Mooney rode back into Madison, checked into a hotel. Keeney got a shave at the barber shop, and Mooney called Charleston to arrange special trains. However, the reality is not that. What will happen is they're going to continue their march southward. So the way that the book, what's the book? The Devil is in These Hills talk about it. It was kind of like Keeney and Mooney were told by the governor to tell them to turn around, and it was kind of a wink wink kind of situation of you need to turn around, wink wink, not really, because they were being pressured by the government to get this to stop. And so this was their effort to do that, and that effort is going to fail. We are at the UMWA hall here that says local 2935, and it's a sharpless, but technically we're in Clothier still. So in the first episode we were at Marmette, and we crossed over Lenz Creek Mountain to Racine, and so far today we've been through Racine over to Madison, and here we are. Clothier is on the Boone County side, Sharpless is on the Logan County side. So we'll visit Sharpless in our third video, and then we'll be on from Sharpless to Blair. Okay, so the miners, you can see here what line they followed, the red lines, and they're going to divide out. One group divided out south of Madison, but we're following this route to Blair. Okay, so let's look at the monument sign here in Clothier. And here is a historical image. It says, "I come creeping" was the Redneck Army's countersign to let someone pass through the line. So you can see here what the miners, they believe they may have looked like. We don't have a lot of first-hand accounts of the miners, because one of the big things that the miners knew was that they needed to keep silent, and if they kept silent, that would protect people and keep them from being charged with, you know, treason and all kinds of other stuff. So we left off in Madison, and the fact that Frank Keeney and Fred Mooney gave the speech at the baseball field and urged the miners to disband. So here's what it says. It says, "In this Union coal camp about 10 miles south of Madison, a miner named Lewis White," they called him Bad Lewis White, "hijacks the C&O train at gunpoint and tells the conductor to take him to Madison. This is where Mooney, Frank Keeney, and Fred Mooney were urging miners to disband, and he's going to pass through here from Clothier on his way to Blair, and he'll have 300 armed miners ready for a fight." The next day, Keeney and Mooney believed that they had succeeded, that the miners were heading home. And it says, "High on Spruce Fork Ridge and Blair Mountain, Sheriff Don Chafin's entrenchments, recently bristling with machine gun fire and rifle barrels, stand empty, and that the negotiator, General Banholst, was on the scene, and that there will be no revolt and no bloodbath." And that's what we were talking about with the speech. The fact is, all of this changes very, very quickly. It's amazing. These people didn't have cell phones. They didn't have text messaging. They didn't have the internet. However, in West Virginia, news travels like wildfire, and it can travel from person to person and place to place very, very quickly. Let's just be honest. The gossip line has always worked well in West Virginia. And so here's what's going to happen. It says, "Sheriff Don Chafin made a fateful decision. While tensions are still high, he sends State Police Captain James Brockus on a mission to Clothier with more than 100 men. Outside of Sharpless, remember, is on the Logan County side, the state troopers battle with armed miners, killing 2 and wounding another." And this is going to be known today as the Sharpless Massacre. And so the state troopers take 5 prisoners of the miners, and the miners capture 4 deputies in response. By the way, here's a picture of the train car, a C&O train car going through Ramage, which is just right up the road, that had been commandeered by the miners to get to Blair. So you can see here, they've got them on the flatbeds. They're on top of the trains as well. It says, "The news quickly spread, sparking rumors among the miners that Chafin's raiders were firing on women and children in Sharpless." And so all these miners that were headed home are now going to start heading south again to go to Blair. And so here's our big dates. So it says August 28th through September 2nd, 1921. It says, "I figure there were maybe 700 men in there in Clothier and Jeffrey and Sharples and Beach Creek and Blair. To get those men in there, they took over the C&O rail train," says Henry Clay Petrie, a 16-year-old miner at the time. So he said, "I rode that train myself. Now let me tell you, we were there for business. It was no cap buster parade." So Ramage, Jeffrey, Clothier, Sharpless. By the way, look at this. I want to show you. I thought it was Sharples for a long time, but it's Sharpless. So pretend like there's an extra S there. Sharpless. Become operational bases for the Redneck Army as they assault Spruce Fork Ridge. Thousands are going to pass by on their way to the front, and the front is Blair Mountain. That's going to be the last stop before they get to Logan. And Don Chafin says no miner's going to come into Logan, the town of Logan. So he saw Blair as the place to stop them. So it says volunteer nurses set up field hospitals. Other Wars set up kitchen and ammunition depots. A schoolhouse on Crooked Creek becomes a command post. The country roads are choked with arming men, and more arrive in overflowing automobiles and hijacked trains from all over the state. They are organized in companies and regiments according to their local unions. And it says, up the mountainside they go towards the heavily armed defensive positions of the Logan Defenders. And so next week, on the third installment of our trip through Blair, we're actually going to go and we're going to be in Logan County at Blair Battlefield. And there's not a monument like this there yet, but hopefully someday a coal company will come off the land and they'll be able to build a monument like this one there at Blair Mountain. So that's where we're headed to finish up the story of the West Virginia Mine Wars. Thanks, y'all, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to West Virginia History with Mrs. B on both Facebook and YouTube.